Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to Headkrack After Hours, man. We got some R&B royalty in the building. My man got a brand new single, get ready to touch your ears, called Another Night. He got an EP right now floating around to get y'all ready for this tidal wave that he about to bring to you. Minneapolis' own RL is in the building. What up, my brother?
Man, what's up with you, man? Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate you.
Yo, thank you so much for showing up, man. This means a lot, man, because I really feel like the true definition of great music is whether or not you can remember where you were when you first heard the song.
Right. I feel like that about a lot of music that I grew up listening to. It takes me back to a moment. I can smell things. I can almost taste things from back at a certain moment. And I think that's the power that music has, man. So if even one person has a slight memory of something from something that I've been a part of, that means I've made impact. You know what I'm saying?
RL, you show up quite a few times, actually, to be honest with you, man. Like, whether it's the group stuff, whether it's the solo stuff, whether it's you collabing, with another artist, moving the pen for other people, and even your new single, Another Night. Here's one thing. You could try to feel however you want to feel about a certain person or artist, but when a song come on and it got go to it, and then you just involuntarily start moving your shoulders around, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I think this sounds like a hit to me. I'm just saying, bro.
Appreciate that, man. It's funny because there are moments of doubt where you listen to what's out right now and you go, do I need to be doing this? Is this where I need to be? Do I need to go in this direction? And truthfully, as an artist, you want to evolve, but you want to stay true to yourself. So I've always felt like I was a part of something that when it came on, you would smile and you would, like you said, involuntarily just move. You know what I'm saying? And that's from my childhood growing up, in the backseat of my dad's Benz. He had the block punk stereo with the neck coming out. And it'd be some music I wouldn't even understand what they're talking about, but I couldn't help but to move, and the window cracked and I'm feeling good. And that's what I wanted to give to, other generations. That's what I felt. So, man, that's a blessing, man. I want you to groove. I want you to move with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you said two things there that really landed, man. Like, those memories. So, when you was young, riding around with your pops, like what's some of the songs, man, that like your pops used to play in the whip with you that just would just make you think of, just simpler times?
Well, it's funny because truthfully, my cousin is Philip Bailey from Earth, Wind and Fire. So I was always with the groove. And then being from north side of Minneapolis, Jimmy and Terry was like my saviors. It was God and it was Jimmy and Terry right up under, you know what I'm saying? So, the Alexander O'Neal, that SOS band and all that. So it's funny because I'll pay homage like I did with, the Get To You record, which I sampled Janet on the Letter J project, which is the EP. That was paying homage to Jimmy and Terry because they produced that. But what's funny is, Jeezy's about to drop on the 20th. And me and my partner have a record on there we wrote and produced featuring Demi Lovato. And it's another record from my childhood, just be good to me. I don't care about, it's taking that same feeling I had back then and trying to transpose it to now. So yeah, I got a groove. And my dad listened to jazz. My mother, she used to sing with, Little Richard, she grew up with Prince, like really grew up with him. And it was always funk. It was always a groove, bass lines. So I try to bring that to the forefront of whatever I do.
So we can immediately establish that it was in your lineage to be great, because there's just too much talented DNA floating around for that to not influence the future movements. But even what you saying a little while ago about how, you listen to what's going on and you wonder, what's the approach, where you should go. And as a listener, and, sometimes I listen to artists and I'd be like, yo, you're so great at what you do. Why do anything other than you? So to get into the psychology of it, how often do you find yourself wrestling with that? Because you are who you are, and there's a reason why you got this far.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the difference between a singer or performer and an artist. Me being able to create I'll say, okay, if this is the lane you want me in per se, as an artist, you want to continue to grow. That's like a basketball player. You know,
Right.
centers are shooting 3-pointers now. They bringing the ball up. Back in the 80s, you're supposed to stay in the paint 5 feet from the rim. So you want to expand your game in with anywhere in life, you know, whatever you're doing. But you still want to stay true to who you are. You still want that back to the basket. You want that go-to move. So you go,
Mm.
okay, I can try this, but I can come right back to this groove. Um, but I think that sometimes we miscategorize singers and performers from artists because I create. So what that means is, okay, if you want me here, I'm not necessarily stuck because I sling this record over here to Lil Duval and Ty Dolla Sign, or I sling this over to Jaheim, or you know what? Here you go, Luther. So I can pass it around, give them the no look, and I can still live through the music, but I live through them. So that way I can still stay true to myself and not feel as constricted because I can go slang this record over here, and that's still a part of
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about your pen game in a little bit. There's so many places to go because, you know, I
me.
feel like I always see you at the UPS store, and we just, we always keep it moving. But oh man, it's just dope to have you here. So R&B, I always talk to people about it. It's a interesting marketplace to compete in right now because
Yeah,
hip hop has a million thousand outlets, right?
right.
To let people know that you're still out here when you're still making progressive music that's young enough to be played on a hip hop station, but maybe it's a little too energetic for the adult contemporary stations.
You stuck. You stuck. You
Yeah.
stuck.
So what do you do?
Um, it's hard because I've had execs tell me this record on my multi-platinum group will be better on this new artist that no one knows because we're dated. I hate to say it, but in the urban market, that's the only place we throw our artists away. But then we're at the funeral, like, oh my God, they're so great, they're so talented. And I think that's why a lot of my counterparts are trying something new and not necessarily being true to themselves because they're just trying to make a move. Like, I got to do
Mhm.
something. Like, you know, touring is great. That's a blessing to have, a discography to where people want to hear the classics, but you want to continue to evolve. Um, it's hard because it's funny. The audience thinks that we can promote and market our music the same way a hip hop artist does, and you can't.
Yeah.
But they like, go to social media, go here, do this, and do. No, most of my audience isn't really on. My core audience isn't on social media per se for me to be slanging music to them. You know what I mean? So that is the place that I think like 112 had a great project out. Jagged, Drew Hill. I talked to Carl Thomas about this. There's all this great music they're holding on to, and they want to get it out, but they're just trying to wait for the audience to catch up to the technology. Because honestly, it's people like you. That's the only reason we heard. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Because there isn't really a place per se for us. But then we're confused because we'll have a concert and it's sold out, and we're like, well, wait a minute, like the people they're here, so we figuring it out. But I do think that that's why a lot of the times you hear singers that are kind of rapping. They're not
Right.
really. They try to classify it as R&B, but I'll date myself. It reminds me of Domino. Here we go, here we go.
Wow.
And it's
Yeah.
really it's rapping, but because you got a little melody to it in the cadence, you're like, oh, that's R&B. Well, nah, that's not really R&B. That's really hip hop with like an R&B melody. But I think that we're figuring it out. I just think we got to just keep plugging away, keep being true to ourselves, and making music, and somebody will hear it. You know what I mean? That's all that matters.
That's the example that you said, Domino, because yeah, truly, Domino was light years ahead of the game, kind of with that
He
sing-songy
was
thing.
Drake. He was like Drake back in the day.
For real, man. I never really thought about him particularly that way. And the crazy thing is you say that about R&B too, but like even for, people who have been around the block a few times in the hip hop space, like a Public Enemy who just dropped the album this year, Busta Rhymes who
Right.
came out with an album not
Busta
too
Rhymes,
a couple
yeah.
weeks ago,
What is it?
Extinction
Extinction
Level Event
level.
2.
Yeah, yeah.
Goody Mob's just about to drop. And
Ooh,
all these people are coming with very solid, cohesive projects. But the
right.
crazy thing, a lot of their core audience isn't necessarily on social media. There's a lot of times where I tell people such and such dropped a new album and they're like, really? because the lack of supportive radio, lack of outlets like
Right.
106 in Park, people always quick to say, well, you got YouTube, you can look for someone still needs to curate this stuff and
Exactly. And
funnel it so you can know what's out there.
introduce you to it. There's a familiar face that can come in your home through your TV screen and be like, yo, I got something new for you. It was the Donnie Simpsons back in the day. It became AJ and Free. And I think that we kind of took them for granted as artists. You know what I mean? Oh, I got to go do this interview, man. I don't want to, he wasn't paid per se, but truthfully, we didn't realize how good we had it, man.
It was the last great, era, man, of just like, physical copies, promotional runs, posters,
Whew.
a team, artist development, you know what I mean?
Right. That's crazy.
It's a
That's
different
that's
machine.
my biggest fear for artists now, that they don't have artist development. Like, I'm all good with the success. Get your money, get your bag, because I feel like there's enough for all of us. But I always ask, different fans, like, what from this new artist will you be playing in 10 years that you're playing now? I'm living off of stuff I did over 2 decades ago, so that's a blessing.
Mhm.
But what songs will you be listening to from your favorite acts now in 10 years? Heck, the way it works, you're not listening to it in 6 months, really. So I hope that they're preparing for after this, you know what I mean? And having other records that can grow with the audience. Because, people laugh and they'll talk about the why you always lying dude and all that. But truthfully, Too Close and Wifey and all the, the great records I was blessed to be a part of still, are recurrent. So that's the beauty of it.
Nah, these records got a pulse, man. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these songs don't got no pulse, they no soul to it. And that's the
Right.
difference. So when you look at today, how people get signed and discovered, it's completely
Uh-huh.
different to how, you kind of got the ball rolling back in the day. For people who don't know the story about, KG discovering you guys and all, how did
Uh-huh.
it all begin for you, RL?
Well, it's funny because it started with it started with Lance and Prof T from the group Low Key. They would sneak us out to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis's studio, where Jimmy and Terry passed on us, and we snuck the demo to Naughty by Nature, who was in town performing in First Avenue where Prince taped Purple Rain. So it's funny because my group members were supposed to be a sound check with me, because we had a show that Friday night with Aaliyah at Princess Club, which is Glam Slam. So they're at the mall getting wardrobe. They're late to sound check, but they run into KG from Naughty by Nature, who's actually going to be performing at First Avenue the next day.
Mhm.
So we perform Friday night with Aaliyah. They end up making it to sound check, and then the next day we go to the concert for Naughty. It was like Naughty by Nature and it was somebody else. I can't remember who it was, but we go to the concert. We don't even get to talk to them. They're on the tour bus, and KG's trying to put his new roster together, and he asks Brother Jules, who was Prince's DJ, yo, who's the dope actor? You know what I'm saying? And our demo tape, happened to be sitting right there on the tour bus. Brother Jules points to the tape and he goes, "That's all you need right there." KG picks the tape up, puts it in his pocket. Literally a few weeks later, we were flown out to New York and were ushered into the Apollo Theater for a concert that had the Lost Boys, Nas, I think Big, all these different acts. So we're there in the audience, and that was our first introduction to the industry. You know what I'm saying?
Man.
So then from there, KG's, working with us. A lot of the album was done before we even got with K, but we got with K. He fine tuned everything, brought us into the club, and showed us how to run radio, and brought us to Clive Davis. And we finished our audition at maybe 5 o'clock. They were working on contracts by 5:30.
So when
So
you
it
say
was
when you say
boom.
audition, just to paint the picture for people that don't understand in 2020 what that is, because people
Uh
getting
huh.
signed off of just having Instagram followers these days. But
Right. Yeah.
so how does an audition back then go?
Well, it was at SR Studios in New York, and like half of the promotional staff from Arista came out. Clive personally came. I didn't really, looking back now, I probably would have been scared if I knew who all these people were, but I had no idea. And we performed. It was a real audition. We get up there, sang the records we had already had, demos we had been doing. And it's funny because we performed. There was another iteration of Koffee Brown that was different than the one that came out, and it was Jaheim. They only picked
Wow.
us. They didn't pick Jaheim or the other Koffee Brown. That's how Ja was blessed to be able to go to Warner, but we were the only group that they chose out of KAYE's roster, and they took us to Airsta, and it was on and cracking.
Man, that's a lot of game right there, yo. That song "After Party" is another one of them slept on. As soon as it come on, just
You know what?
shoulders.
You know what's funny about that record? I have mixed feelings because that's one record I didn't write and I love it. Excuse me. I wrote their second single, which is called Weekend Thing. But what's funny is if you listen to the After Party, I'm talking all over the record. I'm getting my Puff Daddy on. You like that? Take that, right? The reason is because K brought the record to us, and I was like, it's dope, but it doesn't sound like a next record per se. It sounded more it just didn't sound it had a groove, but it was a little different to me. The guys thought I was hating because I didn't write it. So we recorded. Clive comes back and he goes, I want RL to sing lead on the whole song. So we go back again. I kept telling him, I'm telling you, this ain't the record. There's this other record I have. Listen to this record. This is the joint. They pass on my record. We record After Party again. Clive finally calls me and he goes, RL, you're right. You know, this is you did a great job, but it just doesn't fit you guys. Boom. We give it to the new iteration of Koffee Brown. My record that I had written for the group, by then I had sold to Ideal, and it comes out and blows up. Whatever you want to do, love, love, whether it's at the crib or
I
the club.
always felt like that sounded like a next record for real. Okay.
Man, the guys passed on that, and I never let them forget about it because we'll perform it at some of our shows. And actually, some of the guys from Idea are really cool with my group members. So
Mm.
it's like I look at them like, man, this was supposed to be ours. But everything happens for a reason, you know what I mean? So the publishing checks, the blessings, and all that. God was like, nope, we're gonna do this, and I take
Mhm.
it.
Yo, it's so dope when you got enough creative energy in yourself the way you can birth other, operations, because there's a lot of people who have hit songs and you're kind of the nucleus of the
Yeah,
success on that, man. So all right,
no,
cool.
I
So
appreciate it.
the audition goes well. Next thing you know, it's on and popping for next. You're moving your pen for a whole bunch of different artists. I want to go back a little bit into your history. Tell me about the Peppermint Lounge and what
Ooh.
that means to for you and your
Ooh.
history and the songs that came up about that.
Well, what's funny is I was broke back then. You know, people thought you get a record deal, you're rich. Now we was getting $1,500 a month a piece for like I think less than a year, and we were staying at the Robert Treat Hotel at first, which is downtown Newark, right? And it was before they did all the renovations. You know what I'm saying? So we was hood fabulous. So we was out buying all the fake clothes from downtown Newark because we didn't know no better. We thought it was real, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And we would get dressed up and somehow Kay and his fam, Face and Mook and everybody would sneak us into the Peppermint Lounge because I wasn't old enough to get in. But we go and we meet, girls, and some of them wasn't old enough to be in there. But we were all hanging out and we met these girls. And her name was Catherine. And the reason I remember that is because she used to get me out of money. I was my first scam. She scammed me but I won the war because she's the reason we even had the idea for Too Close. One day we were just talking and she was like, yeah, we used to get up on dudes and be grinding to see what they working with. So instantly that's how it was birthed. So shout out to Catherine, even though you got me for a couple hundred, thank you for the idea of Too Close. So that's how we got it though. Just talking to some girls and they're talking about how they was dancing up on dudes. And for me, I don't really like clubs because I don't like crowds and I don't
Mhm.
drink in public per se that much because I always have to be on swivel.
Right.
And if you notice, most of my records that I've written that are up tempo, they're not necessarily about the club. Even Too Close isn't necessarily. You could be dancing on somebody anywhere, but I've always tried to find subjects that I could speed up that weren't necessarily about we popping bottles in the club because I that's not what I do. I never even liked up tempo R&B per se that didn't have a rapper on it or a known sample or something like that. And the only R&B that was up tempo that I knew back then that was popping like that was This Is How We Do It, Montel Jordan, but he was rapping. He was
Right.
doing his own rap. And I was like, man, so I was jealous of the 112s and the Jaggeds, but if you think about it, we took Curtis Blow Christmas rap and that's what Too Close is. That dun, dun. So I was really like, man, we gonna win with this. But Clive Davis was like, I'm telling you, RL, this is the record. I wanted to go with a record called Stop, Drop, and Roll. But once I learned the method, because I'm a sponge, I want to know. I don't know everything. I want to learn more. Once I figured out, okay, radio's where it's at. And if you can run radio, I started going, okay, I was a rapper first, so I could write really fast because I'm a rapper at heart.
Mm-hmm.
I had a record deal for rapping first. So I'm like, okay, I can write a song like this. Too Close took 20 minutes. Wifey, maybe 40 minutes. But it's like, I could instantly hear where I wanted to go with the subject. And it's almost like rapping, but singing the rap. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So, I mean, as big as those records that you just mentioned, I mean, Wifey, Too Close, were there alt versions of those songs that we never got a chance to hear the same way that maybe like After Party had alternate versions? So, what's on the cutting room floor that we missed?
The one record that I really think about this different, and I have the demo and I have to find it somewhere, was Just in Case. What's funny about Just in Case, which I wrote for Jaheim, was I had left the studio from doing Butter Love to write that, and it wasn't necessarily for Jaheim. It was my record, and it was actually a slow song. We had to double time the beat to make it a just in case I don't make it home tonight. Let me make love to you for the last time. It was like that, but
Mm-hmm.
we sped it up. So I gotta find it. I had it a while ago, and I used to listen to it. I felt like it sounded terrible because I was just doing a demo, but it's always fun to go back and revisit that. So that's probably the one record that sounded totally different in comparison to what the world heard.
Man, a lot of game right here, man. Shout out to you for the info. The
Appreciate
90s
it.
was a completely different time, place, and space. I think I seen you mention somewhere that if everybody had camera phones back then, y'all all would be in jail.
Oh man, easy.
What the hell
Or
was going on, bro?
well, what's funny is I see a lot of people getting in trouble from the past now because they're applying they're applying today's rules to yesterday's actions. There's things that we did that we were allowed to do that we weren't proud of. I mean, you go look at Big Pimpin' and you see Dame pouring champagne on a girl and things like that. It was art to us, but we were just being managed kids. So,
Mm-hmm.
some of it I'm not proud of. I mean, this thing, I'm 19, 20, had never really had much. And all of a sudden I'm this guy in this group, and it's like you don't know how to deal with certain situations. And it's funny because my mom used to say she would buy me a new pair of sneakers and I want to put them on instantly, and she'd be like, "You act like you ain't used to nothing." And I wanted to look at her and go, I'm not. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like that. But yeah, I feel bad for a lot of the artists today because there are things that somebody somewhere in some obscure place is talking about that happened in the past that nobody believes them, and I can deny it.
Mm-hmm.
But these younger artists, there's some footage somewhere
Yeah.
that's forever, and they have to live with that. So you got to be a lot more careful now.
It's a weird gift and a curse too, because I always, have conversations with people like I felt like if there was social media, Tupac and Biggie would still be alive because they could have talked it out in the DM or something like that. But then also you see situations where things escalate
Escalate. So
because of social media. So
exactly. Well, I mean, people had cell phones back then, and I've seen interviews from Faye and all that, and I think a lot of that had to do with Suge, which that's above my pay grade. But it's like I actually think that social media escalates things. I think it's hurt in a lot of ways because let's be honest, most people aren't posting um, anything negative. Because when
mhm,
you do, they laugh at you. You look at Reese when he had a moment of vulnerability, talking about wanting to see his child and all that, and people laughed at him. They mocked him, mocked at his pain. So they really say they want the authentic you, but the truth is they want to see the best version of you, and that's what people give. That's why you can't get mad at women with these filters and all these things they're doing. But I think that it produces a false sense of self. You know what I'm saying, for a younger generation, but things evolve. Things
yeah.
always come back around. So we'll just see. But I do see, I see the positives of being able to reach your audience a lot faster, but the negatives is reaching your audience a lot faster. Because sometimes there's no room for somebody to tell you, don't say that. don't do this interview, cut the interview. But if you already done posted it and somebody done screen recorded it, it's over. It's
Right.
there. Nothing you could do.
Yo, like looking at your history too, with the exception of maybe your first, independent solo effort, you've always worked with KG, so apparently there's good business there. Because a lot of times
Right.
within this industry, we might rock with each other for a few years and then we fly away,
True.
do our own thing. But here it is in 2020, you guys are still cooking up together. What's the difference between KG and other people who are out here doing bad business or things that you've seen?
Well, Kay was an artist already, and I think that, well, I hear a lot of horror stories from other artists being taken advantage of. I never had that happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a testament to the kind of person that Kay is. The funny thing, the only reason I didn't have him work on my first solo project was because I didn't want people to hear that sound because it was created by me and Kay. And then you hear this sound and it diminishes the value and the roles of my group members. So I was trying to be a team player, but it ended up hurting me in the end. I was trying to go, okay, you know what? Let me do what you said. Let me get out of my comfort zone. We talked about it in the very beginning, talking about, you have a place, you have a lane. I was trying to exit that lane to keep the lane for next when it was really my lane or our lane, we could all be doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
what's funny is people on the outside were like, okay, yeah, he got the big head. But what they don't realize is Kay picked me up and we went for a ride. And when he dropped me off, I handed him an envelope and it was $100,000 to say thank you because he's the reason. He's the reason I'm right here. He knows that. That's why when he called me, we're doing the Next by Nature project. And I wouldn't have done new next music probably if it wasn't for Kay. But when Kay says something, that's what it is. My relationship with Kay is beyond music. Like literally, I produce now, so I'll hit him and he'll laugh and smile. On he has Android, so I have to hit him on like Duo, and I tease him all the time because it never works. I'm like, man,
Right.
let me buy you an iPhone, big bro. He won't. It's like it won't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
I
we have a
understand the struggle.
relationship where I love him like I look up to him. Put it like that, because his 50th was last year, and I surprised him and came to his birthday party, which was like a 80s themed party. And I really don't go anywhere unless it's usually a check. But I'm like 50th. He was shook. He was super happy that I showed up because I don't. He knows I don't leave the house if I'm a kind of a hermit. But the
Mm-hmm.
respect level that I have for him is so immense that there's nothing I wouldn't do if he made a call. Whatever
That's
he
what's
need, I
up.
got you. No question. So, and it's because of how well he treated me and groomed me. You know what I'm saying? He didn't take advantage of the fact that I was just this young artist that didn't know nothing from the north side of Minneapolis. He cultivated it and was like, you want to learn this? You want to see how to do this? I was the one that was always first one downstairs sitting behind him while he's at his MPC and in front of Pro Tools. I didn't know anything about any of that. The only reason I took a liking to it is because of him.
Wow. I think the only thing that's greater than seeing, black men do good business is also maintain brotherhood. You know what I'm saying? And for y'all
Right?
to be able to feed back into each other like that, that's an amazing thing. And I can't believe that KG is 50. That is crazy.
I
When you
know,
do
right?
the game keep you young, man, if you treat yourself well. Now, you mentioned you drove by it. Now, Next by Nature, what does this
Right.
project sound like? Are you rapping on it too? Or is it the perfect
Nah.
balance?
Well, that's some. I had to give that up because unless I came into the game rapping and singing, I honestly
Mhm.
feel like there's no going back. Like I'll mess around on stuff that nobody will ever hear, but you know, we always felt like we were the R&B Naughty by Nature. Where when you talk about the great hip hop acts, you think of Wu Tang, you think of all these acts, and a lot of people don't mention Naughty. Why? Because they crossed over and their record became bigger than their genre. But you'll go to a basketball game or you'll go to one of their concerts and it's like half Caucasians and all these other ethnicities. They just went on tour with like New Kids on the Block. It's like they're they've they've expanded their audience beyond hip hop
Yeah.
so that they don't get the respect that they deserve or the credit of how huge they were from hip hop fans to me. And we always felt like that was a lot that we had to deal with being next because we are looked at as a tier lower than our contemporaries. But if you turn on the radio, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna hear one of our records. And that's not a bash on them because my favorite group was 112 coming up.
Mhm.
But we decided to come together and make barbecue, skating rink, family reunion, house party type music. And we had a first single that's called We Like. We've been working on like well, no, 4 or 5 of the records. I remember I was in the studio in DC and I was on like my IG Live or something. As soon as I got off, he called me. He was like, "What was that you was playing?" I was like, "Oh, this new record I got." He's like, "Oh, yeah, we need that too for the project." And it was like, "Yes, sir." He was like,
I need
"Okay,
to
big
hear these
bro."
songs, man. And you're right about, and it's crazy that you feel that Next is below, viewed as a tier below, because I don't know, I never felt that way about it. It's like them
Appreciate it.
songs are sturdy, they hold up well, you know what I'm saying? And
Thank you.
they instantly make you feel good. And I think one of the common synergies to that is KG, very underrated as a producer. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
Your writing is tight. KG's a great
Thank you.
producer. So I feel like this Next by Nature project is going to be completely out of here. I'm excited about that. Um,
Thanks, man.
so you got that going on. You got the EP out right now. New single out right now. We're actually getting ready to drop another night, which is
Right.
another one of them feel good shoulder moving situations.
Thanks.
And here we are. Your first singles came out in the late 90s. We're in 2020. You're still cooking. Those years that we didn't see you as active, what were you doing
Right.
to survive in the business? Because there's a lot of people, they can, when everything's hot and everything's on the popping, you see them out everywhere. But what
Yeah.
happens when you got to reconfigure and pivot different?
I mean, the beauty for me was because of discography and the publishing, I was able to evolve and grow. So I could take a minute and live because I honestly feel like the best material comes from living and observing. Um, but I was behind the scenes. I mean, from, let's see, okay, we did Mindless Behavior, you know, let me see, Lloyd. I did 6 on Ginuwine. Let's see, Keith Sweat, you know what I
Damn.
mean? Stuff like that. So I was always like, okay, boom. But what I learned being an artist was, and I think it was to my detriment somewhat, I didn't promote myself as a writer. I let it be about the artist because I know some artists feel a certain way about letting another artist write for them or a fellow artist, a
Okay.
contemporary, because it's almost like, well, really, we competing for the same audience. I'm trying to have you open up for me on my show, so there's this level of quiet competition. So what I learned to do was say, okay, when I go in this room with this artist, I'm not RL from Next. I'm Lavelle Huggar, which is what you'll see, the writings under the credits. And that way I didn't make it uncomfortable. So people didn't know how I was moving. Are you still what you doing? It's funny because I think that the R&B audience, the urban audience, expects to see you and think you have to be doing bad if they ain't seen you in a while. So
Right.
I'm so used to that. Oh, okay, you do okay. Like you're not dead. You ain't on crack. Oh, all right. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like, well, yeah. I mean, was I supposed to be? But I guess that's the expectation when they don't see you. I've learned to separate fame from stability and fortune. You know what I'm saying? I don't need the credit just as
Mm.
long as my name is on the credits. You know what I'm saying?
Yo,
So that's what I'm learning.
there's a level of humbleness that come with that, because some people got to make it all about them. I mean, it's not even a
Right.
shot towards anybody else, but I felt like a lot of times when R. Kelly wrote stuff for other people, it overshadowed the fact that it was
Right.
that artist's good song, because it was just too much of that energy on top of it, and it
But look
didn't
what
feel
look
like it
what
was that
happened.
artist's moment.
Look what happened with that. Now after all the things that have happened with Mr. Kelly, and the allegations and the truths, um, some of those records can't be performed anymore. Now, if it was quietly done and you didn't know who did the record, they could still perform the songs. And if nobody did their homework, you would know.
Yeah, I was telling
But
somebody the other day they should let Aaron Hall re-sing all those R. Kelly songs so we can enjoy them again. You know, like it's just not fair. Like, yeah,
it's hard because I can watch a movie and separate the actor from the role. You know, there's certain
I
movies
can
like
too.
the lady from what was it? What was that? Lean on Me with Joe Clark and all that. Remember the black lady that was on the school board that was trying to get him fired or whatever?
The same
I
lady who
hated.
was in Carmen San Diego with the
I
lips.
think so. I hated her forever. The older lady that was trying to get him fired.
Yeah,
I hated her, but then I would see her in other roles and I'd have to have compassion. I think that it'd be different if Robert's royalties were going to him, but he sold his publishing.
mm,
So if you listen to a song and it takes you to a moment that has nothing to do with that artist, then I'm still struggling with that myself. I'm trying to figure out, can I separate the music from the artist, especially if they're not benefiting from me listening to it. You know what I'm
right.
saying?
No, I totally
Because
get
some of those
that.
songs were amazing.
And a lot of those records were healing components. I Believe I Could Fly. Like, how can we act like this didn't exist? Because I'm not a fan
Right.
of scrubbing away history, and that's the problem with history. Like anything that's ugly that the society deems that, hey, we don't we're not proud of this moment, so we're gonna act like it
Right.
didn't happen, sweep it under the rug.
Right.
See Black Wall
Right.
Street, see the massacre that King Leopold did in Africa,
Right.
where he
Yeah.
slaughtered nearly 20 million Africans. Like the things that people aren't proud of, they sweep it under the rug, but you can't act like these things didn't happen. The Cosby Show happened, okay?
Right.
Despite what Bill Cosby may have done to these people, it also raised us. That
Right.
show.
He was our father to some of us. Like he was like, man, this is what I want my family to be like. And it's about the character. It's not about him and his personal, if that's what happened. Because truthfully, like I said, we talk about camera phones and social media. A lot of our parents' favorites and people we grew up on that we looked at it as a certain level and put them at a certain, pinnacle, we would their characters would be demolished based off of some footage on somebody's phone somewhere. We've all
Indeed.
made mistakes, not no Robert Kelly mistakes, but we've made some mistakes. So it's like I do think, I guess the other argument would be, well, what about these Confederate statues and things like that? I think that's different. I think you don't want a symbol of hate to be up. I'm not saying I should ride around circling my daughter's school playing R. Kelly. That ain't what I mean. I'm not
Right.
saying they should be singing "I Believe I Could Fly" at the Pet Fest. I ain't meaning that. I'm
Mhm.
just saying that there's a time that I can go back to and reminisce about the moment that this can be separated from the artist.
Indeed. Now, speaking of moments, RL, when you think about your proudest or most defining moment, or the moment that was like, yo, there's no greater high or feeling than the one I'm feeling right now. What was that for you?
Um, you know what? It's funny because it happened maybe 2 months ago. So I told you earlier that we auditioned for Jimmy and Terry and they didn't sign us.
Okay.
So for the last 25 years, because we've been out 23, so it was 2 years before that, almost three, I've had a chip on my shoulder because I used to sleep and do homework at flight time. They would sneak us out there to record before we got our deal. I just knew Jimmy and Terry was going to sign us. That's who I looked up to. And they didn't. So one day, Jimmy was doing an interview with Cayman Kelly. And I came in and just, it was a IG live. I came in with the praying hands or whatever and said legend. And all of a sudden, Jimmy goes on this tangent for like 5 to 10 minutes. And he goes, we did those guys a favor. So I'm looking like, I'm watching from my phone. It's the evening time. I'm at the crib alone. I'm like, wait, what? So he goes on to say that they were in a messed up label situation at the time and really wanted to sign us, but didn't because they didn't want to mess our careers up. And they knew that we would latch on with something greater.
Wow.
And then he goes on to talk about, because it's funny, when I did the best man with Tyrese Ginuwine and Case, I was the only guy in the group. They were all solo artists. So I was already nervous. But to top it all off, I'm in the studio with Jimmy and Terry, who I felt didn't think I was good enough. So if you listen to the beginning, I'm like, this is for my brothers in the hood and the high rises, and the mansions with the maids. I made all that up. And in the end, that my brother, all that, I made that up because I was going 100 miles an hour trying to impress Jimmy and Terry. And I didn't know they were watching. Jimmy goes on to talk about how I was coaching Tyrese and coaching Ginuwine and being a cheerleader in the studio. Like, he basically gave me credit for being the cohesive glue that brought the whole thing together. Now, this is 20 something years of me having a chip on my shoulder. So for one of my idols to give me my flowers was one of the best moments of my life. Like, as far as when people ask me, what's your greatest moment back in the day, boom, boom, to be honest, I was so focused in working, and I'm in a group with two real brothers. I felt so alone. Like they're real brothers. So they had certain things that they would laugh about inside. I just would feel like super, and I'm the baby. So I was
You feel
immature.
like the outsider.
Right. So there was really not memories besides me being able to do things for my family, like buy my mom a car, buy my sister a car, things like that, taking care of different things of financially for family members and helping and giving back. Nothing for myself. The greatest moment in the music business, all the success, that's great, the awards, that's beautiful. But hearing Jimmy tell me that he thought I was one of the most talented people was probably one of the most defining moments in my career for me.
Yo, it's not a fluke, bro. It's not a fluke.
Appreciate it,
And
man.
I feel
Thank
like
you.
that probably wouldn't even have hit the way you wanted it to hit if they would have gave it up for you back then. I felt
You
like
and
that
I needed
that
that
needed that
fuel.
to happen now.
Yeah, and I used that fuel my whole career. That I've always used doubt because you hear these stories like everybody from back home supported me and they believed in me. Listen, nobody, fam, nobody. You know what I mean? And my biggest dream was, I remember all the people back home would say, "Yeah, I went to school with Prince. My mom went to school with Prince." My dream was for kids that I went to school with that laughed at me, that told me I wasn't going to do it, to one day have to tell their kids, "Oh, I went to school with him. Go get the yearbook. He live right now." I wanted them to talk about me, like bragging to their kids. And that was my goal. I've always tried to use that negative fuel as a ways to get me to the next destination. But now, 23 years later, and really 25 or 26 years later, after the moment that I felt somebody didn't believe in me, for them to tell me that they felt they saw greatness in me, just changed my perspective. Now, I just want to live. I want to have great conversations and meet great people and continue to create. If 100 people hear it, great. If 1 million people hear it, even better. But I just love it. I just want to do great things, and I want people to be able to say with pride that they know me.
Yo, bonus stuff. Not only did you get the props from Jimmy and Terry, those same people that probably doubted you in high school probably made their children to your music. So if later on down the road their kids start looking like you, that's why. Yo, RL, man, I'm so proud of you, man. In addition to this new single, I know you got some other things in the stash too. What's up with this WQRL project?
Oh, what's funny? Because we revisited, the conversation at least. Maybe April. And Wingo hit me. He'll be reminiscing around the house with a glass of wine, and he'll put on the album because the album is done. And
Mm.
he'll hit me. "I love you, brother. We need to put this out. Blah blah." Or I'll talk to Q because we run in some of the same circles. He lives not too far from me, and we'll talk about it. But the problem is that I know that Jagged has all this great music, and they keep releasing projects, and you can't compete with that. We can't put anything out when the group is doing something. So,
Right.
we're sitting on it now, but I think that eventually we'll release um, a single or something at least, because we have. I'm not gonna lie, the project. I was super proud, especially of Wingo, because people don't realize his voice is so dope. People knew Q was dope already, but I can't. I think eventually, I think that music that is lasting can last. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to just sit on it, whether I go, okay, you know what, it could be a year from now, 5 years from now. Let's put this record out, because that's what happened with Just In Case. We had done the record 4 years before it came out. but great music has a shelf life. You know, it
Yeah.
never expires.